The Undercover Capes Podcast Network proudly presents a series all about the amazing people behind the titles and characters we love. Welcome to Creator Spotlight.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Outside the Panels. Joining me this week across the small pond is my TDC cohort Tracy. Tracy, how's it going?
I'm all good, my dear, as always. Happy to be with you.
Oh, bless you, make me blush.
I know.
And joining us this time from across the large pond, we have writer and co-creator of the up-and-coming Fair Lady book from Image Comics, Brian Schirmer. Brian, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Good to see both of you. Well, virtually, hear you both. I can hear you both.
Very good. Trust me, from 5 minutes ago, that's a lot better than where we were.
It
is. All right. Okay. So thanks so much for taking time out to speak to us. Really appreciate that. We're going to start off with the most basic of basics questions. All right. So I'm sorry if you've heard this one before, but how did you break into comics?
I like to, well, part of me can say I am still breaking into comics, and it's been going on for a good long while. Probably the easiest path would be to say that about 8 years ago, seven or 8 years ago, I did a web comic of sorts through the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. I was a teacher there at the time and had a former student come up to me and say, hey, you should write a comic script that they make a class out of, and then students can work on the comic and get experience and credit in the book and so on and so forth. And I thought it was the silliest idea I'd ever heard. However, after a couple days, I realized I was still thinking about this. And so I went to a friend of mine, Jeremy Saliba, who was an instructor there, and said, hey, what do you think about this? And he suggested we go talk to the head of the department. And we did. And we sat down with him. And his name is Chuck Pyle. And so Jeremy and I were talking to Chuck and saying, well, I could write the script, and you would let us, handpick the best students from the department to work on this comic, and at the end of the semester, we'd launch it as a web comic, and then maybe in the fall we'd do a Kickstarter, and he signed off on all of that, and Jeremy and I left the meeting, and I turned to him and I said, how much of that do you think we're actually going to be able to accomplish? And he said, maybe a quarter of it, maybe a third. And truth be told, we did everything. We wound up having a webcomic, and it was for a book called Ultra Sylvania, which was basically a recasting of universal monsters like Frankenstein and Dracula as world leaders in the 19th century. And it was a modest success to the degree that we ran this class on 3 successive semesters, and had the webcomic running for a couple years, and did 3 Kickstarters, one for each semester that the course ran, and put out 3 self-published books, and that led to basically me getting a proper introduction to Eric Stevenson over at Image a year or 2 after that, and that led to Blackjack Ketchum, which was my first series there a couple years back, and the ball has kept rolling ever since.
So basically, you've created an academic starter, not Kickstarter, and then went from there.
Sure. Yeah.
How would you compare doing that to teaching the basics? You know what I mean? Because obviously you've done teaching for a very long time in the Academy of Arts University there. So how do you find running something like that compared to doing, writing for Creative Comics and graphic novels, which was your...
Right. It's very different. In the class that I was teaching, which, as you say, was writing for comics and graphic novels, it was literally teaching, the basics to various, graduate and undergraduate students, some of whom had not only never written a comic before, but never read one. So yeah,
Wait,
you're stuck.
what?
Oh yeah,
The comic.
oh yeah. I would. There was rarely ever a semester or a term that I taught the class that there wouldn't be at least one person in the class who had never read a comic before, and it was always interesting as to why. I'd ask politely, why are you taking this course? And more often than not, it was just general interest. They kind of knew. They obviously knew what comics were. But I think I think it was a little more highlighted by its expansion into pop culture and movies and TV and so on and so forth. And they wanted to get more down to the nitty gritty of what was behind all that. But how that compares to the Ultra Sylvania class that Jeremy and I ran for a couple of years, that was a very different model in that we had at the time a state-of-the-art classroom for this that was how do I explain it? The students were all working on Cintiqs, which, if anybody in the audience doesn't know, are basically computers that you can illustrate directly on the screen. Yeah. And so the students were working on that, and this was relatively early in the days of Cintiqs. Relatively, it's 6, 7 years ago now. And so Jeremy would ostensibly teach the class, insofar as reviewing the works the students were doing every week and giving them feedback and so on and so forth. And I was there almost in an emperor role of sitting in a chair and giving the thumbs up or thumbs down on final say on things. And I
like that panel, but not the other.
Yes. Yeah.
I use of exclamations is a bit too much.
I don't think I like to think I wasn't too ruthless. I think for a lot of it, I was there to answer questions. If a student was trying to figure out, discern something from the script, as to maybe like what a character's expression should have been, or were they angry, were they sad, I would be there to field a lot of that. But yeah, I certainly wasn't directing. I guess I would liken it to being the writer on a film, being invited to sit on the set and kind of keep your mouth shut and let the director do, and the actors take care of everything.
The Gene Roddenberry role.
Yes, very good.
How very dare you?
Hey, that's how it was later on. Fair enough. Classic Trek's his baby, but after that, it's just a name on the screen. So, unfortunately, sorry about that. As Trekkers then send me hate mail from all over the galaxy.
I will ask the people on my crew not to, because I'm a member of 2 ships here in Ireland.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a proper Trekkie.
Yeah.
Shut your face before you say anything there, Hughes.
Is one of them the USS Blarney?
No. We're the USS Liberty Bell and the USS Caroline.
All right, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Represent.
Yeah, totally. Brian, you understand, right?
Hey, I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm not watching the Discovery thing because halfway through second season, I'm like, what's going on? So, make it so number 1. I'm all for all that. So
I will definitely sign on.
Should we digress?
Well, sure. I think we already have. I am definitely on board, pun intended, for the soon to be named Picard show whenever that should roll out.
Yes.
Now we're talking. That's
we're talking about Riker as well, so it's like, yes, lads. Get the band back together.
Oh. All right. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, back to your amazing book.
Nice segue. I have a quick question. So, Fair Lady and Image have historically, Image have kind of been the place where superstar creators go to produce their wares, way back when it first started. How does it feel now that the dynamic slightly changed and that they're all more open to newer creators such as yourself, where they don't maybe have that same sort of automatic audience pull that people like Todd McFarlane or Rick Larson or back in the Jim Lee had?
it's I think when we did Blackjack Ketchum a few years ago, it was still very much, we were very clearly, and I don't necessarily mean this as a slag, but we were the low man on the totem pole, because there were Matt Fraction, Kelly Sue, Jonathan Hickman, all these huge name folks were still putting out books on a very regular basis, and it was very easy for our little surreal Western to get lost in the shuffle, and it did, and I can attribute part of that to people not really wanting to read a surrealist, Western miniseries at the time, but also that we were small fish in a big pond, whereas now, so many of the people I just named are doing, pulling double duty, working in film and television, that their creator-owned comic output has diminished, a bit. So now, books like Fair Lady are getting, I feel, more of a push from Image. We're getting more breathing room. We're getting more press. We're getting more social media presence, and I didn't know how well we would necessarily do in that environment, but apparently people are still hungry for books from Image, even if it's not from some A-lister that they know who used to write Iron Man or used to write the Avengers. If it's just me, me and Claudia and Marissa and Dave and that are not necessarily even remotely quote unquote household names. So it's been very reassuring and very, very pleasant.
I think that's a bit more nowadays. People aren't looking to get the same old from the big names, and that they are looking for the more, unknown, unusual books.
I'm sorry. I think that's true. I was talking to someone yesterday and saying how I'd kind of noticed a shift in the students that would come and take the writing class. I mean, two cards on the table. I actually haven't taught the class in probably close to 2 years now. I've been on a self-imposed hiatus. But the students that I was getting near the end there, there was no real segregation or delineation between big two comics, between creator-owned, say, Image, or web comics, or manga. They'll read whatever. They read what they like. They look for the types of stories that interest them, or they might try things that they haven't seen before, and that's something relatively unique and novel these days. Of you don't necessarily have readers who are, well, I only read Marvel, or I only read the big two. Now you've got this blossoming generation of readers and potential creators who read it all. They'll read whatever appeals to them in whatever format appeals to them.
I think that's a really good kind of snapshot of the comic book buying populace at the moment, because you're always going to get the big two draw the crowds in because they want to see the newest Avengers book or the newest Batman book, or has Doomsday Clock been delayed again? Oh, what a shock.
Are you still talking about that?
Well, are they still producing the book? I don't know. Anyway, never mind. But whilst you wait for Doomsday Clock, you're in the comic book shop, and now you get a chance to see all the other different things that are out there. My only concern from that point of view is the amount of product. So a couple of months ago, it was reported that Dan Didio was saying that DC are going to cut their product a little by about 15%, I think it was. Marvel are absolutely dominating with the amount of just product that they put out there. How do you feel from an independent point of view? How can you counter that? Because signing up with Image is a good thing, because Image is brand recognition. Image are probably one of the biggest independents. And do we still call Image and Dark Horse and Dynamite, do we still call them independent books?
I would, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, I can still get behind it for Image, because everything is owned by the creators, whereas Dark Horse or Boom or anyone, they tend to they still have a share. They are still owning a part of what they put out.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, Image is, a big kid on the block, but they're kind of a freak of nature in that yeah, they're still independent.
Well, so how does that then challenge you from a creative point of view when you know that Fair Lady's going up against, when it drops, it'll probably be going up against one of three different Marvel events. There'll probably be a DC event kicking off at the same time. How?
It was a little daunting, honestly. It was a little terrifying. I so I got the final order numbers for Fair Lady #1. I want to say about a little close to 3 weeks ago, a little less, and I had nothing. Image hadn't shown me any figures prior to that, and so I got the email on a Monday morning, and I couldn't open it. I let it sit there in my inbox for a good hour, because I had to talk it through. I had to talk it through with Danny, my wife, and say, okay, if the numbers stink, if we've tanked right out of the gate, let's talk that through. What does that look like? What do we do? If the numbers are good, well, let's talk that through as well, and so on and so forth. And then went and finally read the email and saw that not only were our numbers better than I had hoped for, they were actually really stellar. Mm-hmm. And I was very aware that this is coming out, this was coming out right before, so issue 1 came out last Wednesday.
Okay.
And I knew that we were coming up right around the same time as Marvel's the big Thor war thing that's going on now. War of the Realms?
War of the Realms.
Sure.
Where
so
lots of things are happening, but nothing's happening at all.
So I was very apprehensive that stores wouldn't as you know, stores only have so much money, and they're on such a thin budget that anytime they want to order anything that's other than Batman or the Avengers or Superman or a big event thing, it's a gamble for them. But I was very humbled by our numbers, and I attribute obviously a great deal of that to retailers having some measure of confidence in what we were doing.
Just as a quick aside to that, and I think, Tracy, I've mentioned this before on pods with yourself, my local comic book shop only carries 10 copies of any X-Men book.
Huh.
Yep.
That's how much space they don't have for all the product that Marvel puts out. 10 copies of any X-Men book, and that's across the board, no matter which #1 comes out. They have also had to stop stocking Zenoscope because people put them in a pull list and then never come and pick them up, and then nobody picks the book up.
Yep.
So over here, I think a lot of my friends get their indie vibe from books, from Image and Dynamite and Dark Horse and that sort of stuff. And I think that means that there comes an expectation that they're going to read something different. And both Tracy and I have read the book, Fair Lady, and I've got to say I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fun from page 1 all the way through. So
bless you.
I'm sure.
It's a really pulls you in story. You really want to know what's going to happen with this lady next.
I'm interested in the narrative because you kind of join. It's Star Wars New Hope. You join halfway through. Some stuff's already happened, and you're just expected to accept it, and then just carry on with the story, which I kind of like. I've got to be honest, because it feels. I don't know how you feel, Tracy, but it felt fresher than having to go through a whole origin book to get. It
felt like it was established storyline.
Definitely.
Yeah, that was planned from the beginning. It's like I didn't think anybody at least out of the gate anybody needed a full issue of this is how Jenner and Owanu met. This is how she snuck into the military. This is how there are certain archetypes that are being played with there that people can put a little something together in their head, and whether or not the details are accurate, it doesn't matter. All that really matters is here she is now, and she's the equivalent of a private investigator, and you're off and running. And everyone kind of generally knows what a private investigator is and does, and all we're doing is setting it in a fantasy land where kind of anything can happen.
I appreciate that, because so many number ones that I see from a reviewing point of view, I have to wade through the world building. Yeah, it's like 32 pages, and I'm writing the review, and it goes something like, said writer is creating a world of which we will see destroyed by issue 3 as things. Like, oh. You know what I'm saying? So with Fair Lady, it was kind of like, this is the world, either accept it or don't accept it.
Yeah.
But we're not telling you anything else about it. Follow the story. And I was like, wow, okay, fair enough. And I jumped in, so it's cool. Tracy.
Yeah. I was just wondering, how did you find the deciding to use the dynamics of writing a female lead character? Like, it would have been so easy and so, accessible for you to make your main character male. What made you decide that, no, actually, I want to do this as a strong female lead?
I think it happened honestly, it's happened over time. The original kernel of the idea of a private investigator in a fantasy realm might have literally just been those words jotted in a notebook about 7 or 8 years ago. And it stuck with me, and periodically I would just go back to that idea and just start throwing things at the wall to see what would stick, or chipping away bits that I didn't like. Because I think originally it was the notion of a private eye in more of a Tolkien, kind of classic fantasy with orcs and elves and all of that, and just over time realized that, well, maybe we don't want to do that. How about I throw in some stuff from Michael Moorcock? How about we throw in some stuff from Schwarzenegger's Conan? How this, that, and the other thing, and how about we throw in there's little. As a brief aside, sometime soon I'm actually going to do a Twitter thread that is nothing but a list of things that inspired aspects of Fair Lady, and there's going to be a lot of stuff in there that's going to just throw people because it's things that are only in the book maybe for one issue or even a scene, because there's bits from MASH in there.
Is.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
There's stuff from MASH. There's stuff from Deep Space Nine. There's just this has really become sort of my kind of playground where I get to go and celebrate all of the things that I've enjoyed over the years, and setting it up as a big sandbox of quote, this is a fantasy world, unquote, allows me to do pretty much anything. Short of having ever run into a Deus Ex Machina situation, because we're not going to have those. I went so deep down my own rabbit hole, I forgot what the original question was.
Well, so Tracy and I were saying before we gave you a call that we saw elements of Calvin and Hobbes a little bit. And
I'm sorry. I remember Tracy asked why it was a woman.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it was just sometime over the intervening few years that I was thinking about it and thought, well, I think sadly the default that I had was that it was a dude, and I think the reason it was a dude was that the original idea wasn't that it was a private investigator in a fantasy realm. It was, what if we recast Magnum PI. The old, with Tom Selleck and the mustache and everything in a fantasy realm.
Whoa, hang on. There's a new Magnum in town. There is a new Magnum in town. And I have a Magnum question coming up later. All right, so...
Okay.
My first thing to Johnny when he asked me if I wanted to do this pod was like, oh, can we talk about Tom Selleck's tash? Oh man, Brian, we are going to be good friends.
Fantastic.
Oh my god. My god, trekking tashes. This is what the world has come down to.
Hell yeah. And now we're going to start talking about D&D soon, so it's okay.
Hold on, let me get my dice.
And I honestly do not remember the point. I mean, it had to be at least 3 years ago that I was thinking about the story again, and had the thought of, well, wait, what if it doesn't have to be, dude in a Hawaiian shirt and a mustache, traipsing around Lothlorien? what if it's a gal? What if it's a woman? And as soon as I thought of that, it just started to open up all of these possibilities that I thought would potentially be more interesting and give more dynamic to the character and to the story and the storytelling. And I think very quickly after figuring the character would be a woman, lobbed on the notion, which is also going back to Tolkien and the idea of a woman whose culture does not allow her to fight in the war, having to go in and masquerade and disguise herself as a man to do so. And I thought that is a great backstory, because we obviously get to see that and read that in Lord of the Rings. But there's not a lot of there's a bit of an aftermath in the books, at least, of what happens with Eowyn. But then her story. In the movie, eh? Pardon?
Not so much in the movies, though.
No, not so much at all. But I think that's a great place to start for a character.
I think I called it the Yentl aspect when I looked at the book. I said to my wife, "What's that book? What's that film with Barbra Streisand in?" And she was like, "I Was Born." I was like, "No, that's not it. No, that's not." How do you think then, with the change from the dynamic from being male to female as a PI, how do you think that women are perceived in comics, both at the character and creator level now? Are things getting better? Do you feel that characters are becoming, I guess, stronger in their own right, and then creators are then getting their chance to put their work forward?
I short answer, yes.
Good answer.
Longer answer is I think there's certainly still a long way to go. But I can you can look back even 10 years and you didn't have, say, Ms. Marvel. You didn't have a lot of creator-owned books that have female protagonists. I'm thinking of Lazarus from Greg Rucka.
Oh, Lazarus was so good.
Oh,
Black Magic.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. Pretty much anything Greg touches. But G. Willow Wilson, arriving on the scene, I would say that was roughly 10 years ago as well, and Ms. Marvel on top of that.
And Woman.
Yes, certainly.
Which is the archetypical sort of female comic book character, isn't she?
Yeah. I think we're seeing more. I feel a little dirty even talking about it, because here I am, yet another straight white male creator, talking about the state of women in comics, and it doesn't, on a certain level, it just doesn't feel right. But I do feel safe in saying that I have been a reader of comics for long enough and an observer of the industry and on the fringes for so long that I've noticed the change over time, and I think that's very fair, and I think there's more of it on the horizon, and there's more to come.
Cool.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's okay as well. I think a lot of people worry about the stigma of being a straight white male commenting. You know what I mean? You're in the industry. Your information is important to anybody who's starting out, whether it's male or female. So
absolutely, I think
you are completely legitimized in making your statement. And if anybody says you're not, send them my way.
I will do so.
That's, you know what, Tracy raises a really valid point, because people turn around and say, I feel uncomfortable talking about this, but if the industry is populated predominantly by a certain group, then that certain group has the power to change. So, you're absolutely, I agree with Tracy. We've got your back on this every time.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Especially when you're putting out a really good comic with a very good female lead, then, you obviously know what you're doing.
Definitely.
Sure. I was
a female writer, who writes female characters. I feel that you done well.
Oh, thank you. Most kind.
Straight from the horse's mouth. I wasn't going to say that. So, are we going to find out how Jenna and her partner get acquainted down the line?
Down the line, yes. Probably not until our next arc. because while we'll be so the focus of every issue is on, again, it's kind of a case of the month series, so it's you get your beginning, middle, and end of a complete mystery every time. And whenever we're getting detail about their relationship or Jenner's past, or where the wizard is whose tower that she lives in, there'll be just little clues and little breadcrumbs that'll be put out with pretty much every issue. But only if it comes up organically in the story or in the conversations that the characters are having. I can tell you that. What can I tell you? That yes, you will learn a little bit more about. You'll learn a little bit more about about Jenner and about the supporting characters through the first 5 issues of the series. But I think there are going to be bigger revelations, like I say, in our second arc or our second season, however you want to.
And you have the first 3 ready, right?
Pardon me?
You have the first 3 issues done, yeah?
First 5, actually.
Oh
yeah.
Excellent.
Telling you short there, wasn't she there? Ooh, boo. Come on, Tracy. Boo.
Excuse me, that's the only thing in my research I got wrong, okay?
Oh. Sorry, Lieutenant Commander Data over there.
Play nice, you two.
do you find when you're doing an arc like that you're never happy until the end product comes out, or do you like the unknown of putting an entire arc together?
I'm honestly not sure what my favorite stage or step of the process is. I mean, I really enjoy the rawness of the very beginning, when it's just me and a notebook and then thinking about, okay, what's this issue's mystery going to be? What do I want the characters to achieve? Where do I want the story to progress? But at the same, I love that stage, but I also really love seeing the artwork as it comes in, because I'll supply Claudia, who's the illustrator, and Marissa, who is the colorist, with reference photos. If I have specific things in mind, I will supply them with reference. And but at the same time, in the script, I tell them both, it's like, look, you guys are the visual artists. I'm supplying some stuff here for you, but I'm not shackling you into this by any stretch. This is a blueprint. You two bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this that I do not possess. Mm-hmm. I want to see what you create based on what I have written, and more than 9 times out of 10, what I get back is far, far superior to what my feeble brain might have dreamt up, and that's just a joy.
Do you find that as a creator, you create the world, you have this kind of vision in your head? How is it when you interact with sort of like Claudia and Marissa? Do they always blow you away? Do they explain why they went a certain way versus where your expectation level was? Are you a takeover Ted?
Oh God, I would be terrified for you to even ask them that.
Right.
No, there's always I always have some kind of feedback, but more often than not, it's along the lines of making sure that, if I need there to be more space in a panel because there's, dialogue that needs, or a caption that needs to go in there, then that's something. It's never, my feedback is never anything like, oh, well, that person would never wear that type of outfit, and here's why. I'm not going down.
With those eyes.
Right.
How dare you?
I think it's occasionally, or sometimes I'm just a fresh pair of eyes. Like I might spot a tangent in the artwork, or I might spot something where a character. Sometimes because Claudia and Marissa both work digitally, I've a couple times caught an instance where, say the corner of a room, the line that is delineating the corner is actually accidentally overlapping a character. And, I'll write to Claudia and say that, and that's just her switching out a layer. Saying I am a fresh pair of eyes is actually not a way that I've looked at before, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's a good show.
And
Go on, Tracy.
Sorry, with the end process, what do you find as a writer who's putting your own stuff out there? What's the most stressful part?
Oh my God.
Doing interviews.
Sure. I mean, reviews, certainly. I aspire to be one of those creators who does not look at reviews, but I honestly, at this stage of my career, I think I have to, in part because once the book was announced back in January, I foolishly believed that the amount of work that I would need to do would go down a little bit. And despite the fact that I've done this before, and apparently conveniently forgot the part that no, I am out there doing a good chunk of extra marketing. As I said before, Image is a big powerhouse, and they are able to, they're putting more effort towards, shall we say, non-A-list creators like myself, because they can now. But at the same time, I need to make as big a noise as I can for our book to make sure that it lands with retailers, to make sure that it resonates with readers. So there's a lot of, I do need to pay attention to reviews, and ideally they're very good, and I'm very happy to say that 95% of the reviews I've seen have been stellar. So I need to be aware of that so I can better tailor marketing and social media to further promote the book and keep us on people's radar. And I think I've done a decent job of that. Again, our orders were really solid, and I don't know if you saw this, but we actually, I think they announced yesterday that we sold out at the distributor level.
Congratulations!
Thank you. So we're going to a second print.
Excellent.
We've got, I think, final order, and they're getting it out there really quick. The final order for the second printing is this Monday, because they want it to come out the same day as issue 2.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. And so again, I'm sure, I suspect part of that is based on is at least based on my efforts. But I would also like to believe that a lot of it has to do with the fact that apparently we created a book that people do like, and they're buying, and they're telling their friends to buy, and that's just a relief.
And then there's always conventions.
Oh, don't get me started.
A quick question
I don't get a month off until December.
Oh no.
And I say a month off, but in truth, I imagine there will be writing going on. But at least there are as of right now, there are no conventions and no signings scheduled for the month of December. So that's my long.
Let me get on that and see what we can sort out.
Thank you.
Who came up with the homage cover to the standard issue? So the homage cover is very much Quietly and Sinclair. Avid-eyed Eagle fans will notice that it's a Batman and Robin homage, to say the least.
So that was when we were initially talking about cover ideas. I threw a couple. So the discussion was pretty well myself, Claudia, and Jeremy Saliba, who's one of the 2 editors on the book, and I was just knocking through different covers that I'd seen before as inspiration, and then I remembered that cover from Batman and Robin. I thought, we got a larger character and a smaller character, and we actually have instead of a Batmobile, we've got their little three-eyed bears that they ride in this thing. And it's like, and I sent Claudia a few ideas, and one of them was that. I said, this one sounds kind of fun. What do you think? And she drew up. She did roughs for I think 3 or 4 different covers, and we saw that one, and we all collectively went, yeah, that's going to be fun. That's going to be fun right out of the gate. And I don't think there are that many series out there, that aren't spoofs, that would be brazen enough to do an homage to a Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely, Alex Sinclair book. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah, okay, let's. People are either going to hate that and think we're being derivative for no reason, or they're really going to dig it. And fortunately, it seems that the response generally has been the latter. It
works, definitely. Just how does that work? Do you have to get permission from the guys and say, look, we want to do this?
Well, shit, I hope not.
Right.
If we get, I would love for the book to be huge enough that I get a cease and desist order from DC. No, I think it's taken for what it is, which is, again, it's an homage, and we credit it, within the book as such. So no, I think I as far as I understand, we're on sound legal ground, and we're not diminishing in any way, shape, or form what they did.
Yeah, it's a parody, isn't it? It's a parody clause that you can use.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know I'm going to rob one of Johnny's questions.
No, don't.
I'm totally going to rob one of Johnny's questions.
Don't have one.
Speaking of homages to people, if you could bring any character from any other universe into your book, who would it be?
I am going to deftly sidestep that question, if only because there are a handful of characters that I wanted to definitely see in there, and we do in future issues. I don't want to say who they are because they are, again, homages to characters. One of them will probably be fairly obvious, but I like to think 3 of them will be genuine surprises, and I think there will be enough astute readers out there who will recognize them and call them out on social media when the time comes, and that'll be fun.
So for everyone listening to the show, if you'd like to get in contact with #OutsideThePanels, and then we can put a poll on and we can work out who it's going to be based on the following fact. I'm joking, of course. It's fine.
No, that's fun.
I'll totally do that.
We did a signing over the weekend in Southern California, and there was a gentleman that we sold a copy of the comic to, and later that night he had read it and went on social media and said he loved it and nice to meet me and all that, and then said he really enjoyed the homage to Apocalypse Now. And I read this, and it took me a good hour to actually, without having to look at the comic, to honestly remember what he was talking about, because Apocalypse Now is, for better or worse, one of those movies that I do go back to time and again and borrow from in one way or another. And it took me forever, and then I realized, there's a bit in one of the last pages, I don't want to spoil anything, where a character is talking, and it is very clearly an exchange lifted from Colonel Kurtz, which is Marlon Brando and Martin Sheen at the end, and managed to slot that in. And I'd forgotten. I that's another thing I think I need to steel myself for. As I say, this series is very much my playground for all of these forms of media that I've, particular stories that I've loved over the years. But some of these things, I wrote, year and a half ago. I don't remember necessarily what I was ripping off at any given time. So again, someone's going to chime in later and say, this is a bit from I don't know. This is a bit from The West Wing, and I'll probably have to go. Okay, I guess I got to go reread the issue again or go look at my notes because I don't remember exactly what I was ripping off.
You're an equal opportunist, isn't it?
Yes. Oh yes.
You take a bit of everything.
I'm sure there's a more polite way of saying that than that, but never mind.
I'm being as honest here as we can be.
I can only say homage so many times.
Yeah. Okay. What was it that you mentioned the West Wing? Sam Seaborn says that, what was it? Good writers borrow from other ones, great ones steal. I think that was the quote from Sam Seaborn, so there you go.
I'm sure he said something to that effect.
So I'm a huge West Wing fan, so yeah, so it's cool. All right, okay, we've touched on it. There's a PI in the room. You've already kind of said Thomas. Tracy's obviously a Tash man. Does anybody watch the new Magnum show, or is it just old school that we're talking about?
Well, just old school. I was curious. So a couple years ago, they were developing. This was before the one that's out there now. They were developing a reboot that was going to be. It was going to be Magnum PI, but it was going to be his daughter. It was actually going to be a direct continuation from the original series, and it was going to focus on Thomas Magnum's daughter as a private investigator in Hawaii. And it was going to be, I think, John Rogers, who did the series Leverage, was going to be the showrunner.
Oh, that would have been so much better.
And
Right.
if I'm wrong, if it wasn't, I know John, I know he was involved in some capacity. If he wasn't the showrunner, and my apologies. But I remember when it was announced, and I seeing once again Greg Rucka jumping on social media saying, you know, if this gets picked up, I want in. I want to be. I want. And then of course it didn't happen, and my heart breaks a little bit because my God, I would have loved to have seen Greg Rucka write a female Thomas Magnum in a direct sequel to Magnum PI. That would have been just amazing.
We probably need to do another, strongly worded letter to the executives.
Oh God, yes.
Can we
hey, make this happen? We know people want to do it. And then have Christian Kane go in as her sidekick.
Yep.
That make me happy.
So, what about the current show? It's half a season old and already you're dismissing it. Really. I am hurt. I feel so bad for the cast of the new Magnum, which Mrs. Hughes and I watch the day after it airs because we tape it because we're too busy watching Grey's Anatomy. Okay. Somehow I think I've shot myself in the foot there.
You have to all of your secrets.
Hey, I'm still cut up McDreamy's gone, so let's just keep it at that. All right. So Fair Lady, I love the hook that every issue is its own story for the most part. I love that. It harkens back to when I was a kid growing up in the UK. We didn't have the greatest of comic book shops or newsagents. We didn't get them regularly enough, so I always used to try and find the ones that had the whole story in because I was never guaranteed to get the next issue. So I kind of like that. It harkens back to that a little. I like the fact you've got some overall arc going on there. So that's Fair Lady's short-term future. What about yourself? What's next for you? Other than getting a month off in December, which we're trying to destroy.
Yeah. Series, new projects wise, nothing I can directly address. Excuse me. At the moment, I can say that I am developing a series that is more of a quirky horror series set in the San Francisco Bay Area that is with an artist who has been doing stuff for DC and is getting a lot of notoriety over the last year, and that's about all I can really say about him. That probably won't see the light of day until that probably won't see the light of day until the end of the year, beginning of next year at this rate. But that's going to be something special. In the meantime, I am the chief engineer on the Fair Lady train, and I'm doing I think we're booked for 11 or 12 different store signings, and I've got 3 under my belt thus far. So I've got another 8 or 9 to go between now and the middle of June, and then we're hitting every, we're hitting a vast number of conventions between now and the end of the year. I've got Denver Con is in a couple weeks. Then we're at Heroes Con in North Carolina, San Diego, Rose City Comic Con, New York Comic Con, Thought Bubble, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple in between there. But there's no rest on the horizon.
Thought Bubble, I'm going to have to get the plane over now.
Please! I think I am very. We were talking about this, I think, before we started recording. John and I that really looking forward to see what they do with Harrogate, and where the wife and I are booked into the I think it's the Majestic, which is the hotel, their base of operations, and that just looks gorgeous. So that's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a great way to close out what looks to be, based on again, the first issue, looks to be a very successful year.
You can always jump on a plane and come and visit Dublin. Just saying.
Not impossible. So I was saying to Johnny before we started recording that my wife and I are going to be out there for 2 weeks because she's a London gal, and so we've got family and quite a few friends out there. So not impossible.
Well,
Down south.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Brian, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciate it. Your book, I'm not gonna go over the top, but it is an absolute fun read. Page one all the way through, so engaging. You are absolutely right. There are snippets of bits and bobs. You'll miss them the first time round, so go back, reread them. You'll spot them eventually. If not, listen to this podcast and we'll tell you all the secrets later. Thank you once again, Tracy, for taking the time. Appreciate that as well.
Oh, thanks for having me as always. It's always great to talk to new and exciting creators. It makes me happy.
And of course me. Thanks. Cheers. Yeah.
Obviously, but I speak to you all the time and you know I love you.
All right, so this is Joining the Machine Hughes saying don't forget to check out UCPN for all your other favourite podcasts, including The Definitive Crusade, Tracy's Show,
The Dynamic Convergence,
where we mash up Marvel, DC and Star Wars coming up soon.
Yeah.
And No Price Podcast for all your Marvel news, especially with a guest star coming up soon, and Avengers. All right, this is Machine Hughes saying see ya.
Bye.
Thank you.